bench to the bleachers. You are listening to the only podcast in Ontario that keeps you in the game.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Alright, let's do this.
My next guest on In the Game held the women's Canadian marathon record. She also won a bronze medal at the Pan Am Games in the 10,000 meter. She was a member of the Olympic team in the 2016 Rio Olympics, doing a double of the 10,000 meter and the marathon. I'm talking about Lanni Marchant from London, Ontario.
So basically, I wanted to start with you as the first female athlete. Because it is a tough sport. I want to educate some people, and I want to make, the running community has grown over the years. It's gone, since the 90s when I ran. It's really taken off, and it's taken off in the female aspect of it. But it has been with a lot of struggles. And I would like to talk to you about those struggles. But first and foremost, I want to get into your background. You come from a large family. Correct, and that's probably where tell me a bit about the athletic side or the family side with you guys growing up as young kids.
Yeah, so I'm one of 7 kids, and my mom was a figure skating coach. So a lot of us, we all grew up figure skating, but the daughters primarily, that was our focus. I was just as against the grain as a child as I am now as an adult. So we always had to run laps of the parking lot when we got in trouble. And so my laps of the parking lot turned into laps of the track, and then now road race laps, which is funny because I tell that story often, and I've noticed over and over and over again, if I submit my bio and have that story in it, they edit out that part where it just goes, Lanni transitioned from figure skating to running. And I was like, no. What? No. So now I have a rule that if I submit a bio, they can't edit it without my permission, because I'm getting tired of that part of the story. Yes. I know it seems inconsequential, but it actually is important to me because it shows that the voice I have now is the voice I've had ever since I was a kid. But yeah, we were very athletic growing up. My mom, after each baby, was back out running and training. Some of my earliest memories of running when I wasn't in trouble, when I was running for the fun of it, would be going through evening runs with my big brother. And he would slowly start to die, and I'd be dragging him. And then we'd get within 200 meters of the house and we'd take off sprinting. And I was like, you jerk.
So you guys were very active. So how many sisters and brothers, is it divided, or is there more girls than boys?
More girls. So okay. I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers. All the sisters skated. My older sister skated professionally in ice shows. She was earmarked to go to the Nagano Olympics. I think those would have been the 98 Olympics. 98,
yep.
And her partner broke his hand on the warm-ups of the qualifying rounds. So that kind of ended her Olympic dreams. And in my family, she was supposed to be the Olympian. It wasn't ever in the books that there was something I was going to do. My sister Randy is a fitness fanatic, manages a gym. My sister Shannon ran on scholarship at Detroit Mercy and is a coach and a CrossFit phenom. And my sister Mackenzie is getting her PhD, but also is a spin instructor and super fit. And then both my brothers dabbled with hockey and soccer and the 3-on-3 basketball tournaments that we have back in London, Ontario. So I was never hurting for people to motivate me to get out the door. And with all of the injuries I've had over the years, it's been awesome having people to join me for my walk runs. And now I have my nieces and nephews to kind of throw into the mix and make them go do strides with me.
So you guys were kind of like the Wahlbergs of London. What I mean by that is a large family, athletic family, and kind of not a gang, but you probably were close, right? I would imagine.
Oh,
you would have been close. So you're speaking very highly of your siblings now. So I would imagine that it was a tight-knit family from the get-go, which has allowed all of you guys to individually chase and pursue your dreams. And I remember seeing your mom a bit on social media, very proud of all her children by the looks of it.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely raised us to go after what we want. And then having as many of us, the first five of us are really close in age. So, as great as we are together now, there were some pretty tough times. I think at one point, all the first five of us overlapped in high school. So, yeah, we definitely kind of like, we were that family. Everybody knew of us, good, bad, or ugly. And no, so it's great, and I love it now that we're older. I as much as COVID's been hard, I haven't been able to get home as often as I usually do. I constantly have someone to FaceTime or talk to pretty much daily, and without burning anybody out. So it's been good.
So you jumped out of figure skating, and I think it was somewhere around the middle of high school. You transitioned into track and field, correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
Was it any immediate liking to distance, or was this a progression that you maybe did a 400 and 800 and it kind of went from there with your coaches and yourself, or did you just figure, hey, I'm going to push harder, go further, this is the farther I go the better I feel and the more I like it?
Well, I think from the laps of the parking lot as punishment, I kind of developed a good base, and I did in elementary school. I think there was years I did high jump and shot put. Like I didn't even do like distance running at all. And then through high school, I primarily did the distance events, but I also would get roped into doing the 4x4 and stuff like that. So the longer stuff, it's funny. My coach, I remember being in high school, and I'm still with my coach now, Dave Mills, and we were doing a cross country workout in high school. And there was this nasty hill we were doing repeats up and down on, it was like a mile loop, but you finished up this like brutal hill. And I would get to the top, and he would be like, "That was ugly, but like you're going to be a great 10K runner one day." And I was like, "What? No, I want to run the mile." But by university, the writing was on the wall. I always did the 1500 or the mile. I went to school in the US, so they had the mile for indoors. And, but like, I think by my third year, I missed the track season because of a stress fracture. But we kind of knew that the next year when I came back healthy, I'd be doing the 10,000. It was kind of like, you're a 5'10" girl.
It's funny because you just said about the mile, and I grew up, I'm a couple years older than you, but I grew up when I first got into distance running. I was really into Steve Prefontaine. I was really into Frank Shorter, but the attitude with Steve Prefontaine back then was about the mile. The mile, I want to be a miler because that was the thing, right? And Bill Bowerman reeled them back and had to say, your gig's going to be the 3 mile, or and it's funny how you were saying the same thing about the mile. We all want to have that quick, explosive, 1600 meter race, but then, like you said, it's a different race, it's a different strategy, and some people just excel at different distances than others, right? And we'll talk a little bit further about your 10K and marathon pull off, which was to me was pretty impressive. But so leading out of high school, how did you get approached for Tennessee, like going down for the mocks? Were you actually recruited, or was this one of those things where with the track club you just kind of were putting up some numbers and someone saw you? How did that go about?
Yeah, so at the time I was recruited to go to UT Chattanooga. I was recruited by a few schools, but I chose UT Chattanooga. There was a great Canadian pipeline. The assistant coach at the time was actually from my hometown. He was the first Canadian to have gone down there. There was a few seniors that were graduating the year before I get there, but when I went on my recruiting trip, there was 2 or 3 Canadian guys that were graduating out, but one of them was sticking around to do his grad school. And then currently on the team while I was there were 3 other Canadian guys, one of which was Kevin Sullivan's brother, Colin. And I don't think there had ever been another Canadian girl before me, but I definitely liked that there was a bunch of Canadians there. I liked that I wasn't going to be the best girl on the team right away. There was some depth there, and some of the other schools, because I was okay in high school, I wasn't, winning OFSA. I got an OFSA bronze, I think, my senior year, but I wasn't like a standout, crazy good high school runner. So I wasn't getting recruited to some of the bigger programs. So when I looked at some of the smaller programs that were still Division 1, it was really hard to find one where I wasn't going to walk on and be one of the top girls. And UT Chattanooga kind of gave me that I had a Canadian community there. I had a group of girls that were going to make me work to be one of the best on the team. And I liked the climate because it was a lot warmer than London, Ontario.
So how was the adjustment for you going as a freshman out of high school, as a freshman into university? Did you have some setbacks, or what were the toughest challenges? Because I mean, you would have probably left there, went into it maybe the end of summer training for cross country season to start. How was the adjustment for you? Do you remember any of that?
Brutal. Yeah, I got a stress fracture that first cross country season, and it kind of set the tone for multiple fractures going forward. And so I got to experience growing up figure skating. You deal with it's a very abusive atmosphere. You have some very abusive coaches. It's very controlling. But then when I switched to running and I had Dave Mills, I thought like all running coaches were such a soft soul like him, and not the case. So I got recruited and then got hurt fairly early on into my collegiate career, and unfortunately got to see what it was like to have a very abusive and aggressive collegiate coach. And because I grew up with it figure skating, I didn't realize at the time the effect that it was having on me. To me, that was actually more comfortable and more my norm, to just have like horrible things said to me, be told I'm too fat, like all these things. And then add to that, like I was alluded to earlier, that when I would get in trouble figure skating, I had to run laps of the track because I went against the grain and I had a voice and I was an advocate. I lost a lot of that down in Chattanooga those first couple of years because of coming from a large family, single parent household primarily. I knew the stakes. I knew if I lost that scholarship, if I got sent home, that was kind of it. Like I wasn't gonna, like I'd still go to university, but it would be a lot more expensive and a lot harder to do. And it's almost like my coach in college knew that, and he kind of just like held that over my head. And so it became a lot more difficult to be injured, not being able to perform the way I wanted to, not be able to show I was deserving of that scholarship, and then have someone remind you of it on a daily basis. But I was able to turn it around, and I'm fortunate for my teammates to be able to do that, and fortunate that I was able to find that resolve within myself and find my voice again.
So you're at that level now, and you just said about a single parent home, and then going into this situation, and then the injuries, and then the coaching. Is that the start of the Lanni Marchant that we know now? With and I hate to use it as, you know, like developing thicker skin, but it's just you're finding yourself, because you're still growing as a person, right? And you're overcoming massive challenges. Is that the start of it? Is that, you know, for you saying, okay, you know, they're not really, or he's not really giving two shits about me and holding something over me. I'm injured. Like you're there's nobody with you. There's no support with you, like the family, right? So you're by yourself fighting to keep everything you have, because like you said, schooling's expensive. Is this the toughness factor? That is this where this started for you? I mean, there's many other things I know that come down the road with you, but could you contribute some of that to this early in your age?
Yeah, I would say so. I think what happened is towards the end of my freshman year, my coach told me to go sign my release papers. I'd had a terrible workout. I'd come back from 2 different stress fractures in that freshman year, and I was actually running okay. I ended up winning conference a few weeks after this, but
not good enough, right? But not right.
Well, it was just interesting. So the week or 2 before conference, he tells me to go sign my release papers, and so I went and signed them. He's like, "They're up at the compliance office. Go sign them." And I called his bluff, and I went, "You know what? Nothing is worth this." At one point, at the track, he told me to go like throw myself off the bridge on my way home, and that's kind of where my brain clicked, and I was like, "You're lucky, as broken as I am right now, that I'm strong enough to not to do that." And that's where I realized like this isn't a healthy place to be, and I don't want to be here anyway. So I went and signed my release papers, and when he found that out, that was quite upsetting to him. And the assistant coach, it was a different coach than the one that recruited me. An American assistant coach took over my program. And within 3 weeks, I won conference championships. Good. And the change of the head coach at that point and how he treated me, that he didn't even speak to me the days leading into the race. And then once I crossed that finish line first, he was there carrying my backpack and my water bottle for me. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like you Like you're so simple. Like it's so simple.
It was figure skating all over again.
Oh, 100%. It
Yeah.
was exactly being pulled into dressing room number 6. When I figure skated, you did not want to go in that dressing room. You knew, like grown men came out crying from that dressing room. You just knew in figure skating, don't go into dressing room 6. Don't do anything that requires you to have to be pulled in there. And that's once I saw that with my collegiate coach, I almost did transfer, but at the end of the day, I decided to stay. I really liked the econ department that I was in. I learned that was kind of the first real like buff up of my voice and of my the Lanni everyone has grown to love or hate today. And I never lost that grit over the next 3 or 4 years that I was down there. That anytime he did something I didn't like, I was fine to then use my voice and advocate for change, or say, all right, then I'm out. Like I'm not doing this. I'm signing my release papers. I'm transferring. I'm going to go elsewhere. And once I realized, and I talk about this a lot now as a pro, that athletes, whether they're at the collegiate level, club level, or pro level, we need to remember that sport doesn't exist without us, that we're not replaceable as we're made to believe, and that we're not a commodity. We're actually luxury items. And we need to actually start treating ourselves that way and having the expectation to be treated that way.
It's funny how you just jumped into that, because I was going to go back. Everything starts at the college level. So whether you talk the NFL, whether you talk the NBA, whether you talk Olympics, that's where they all are, and they go to the next level. Are we preparing, or are we changing the way that we're doing things, or are we offering the right assistance to young athletes for mental illness or mental strength training for our young athletes? Are we doing enough or no?
I don't think we're doing enough. No. I obviously my experience was, oh goodness, when did I graduate? 13 years ago. But obviously my experience is a bit dated comparative to what athletes are going through now. But as we saw with the Mary Kane article that came out this past winter, fall and winter, we know that it's not all that far removed. Granted, hers was at the pro level, but she was only an 18-year-old kid.
And that was the whole deal with the Nike Oregon project, correct? Was
yeah,
that not
Nike,
going on with
Alberto Salazar, but
Yep.
the group think, and her teammates have all come out and apologized. And I think obviously she has to decide her healing methods, and I'm sure that she'll get to a place where she forgives the parties involved. But that her teammates kind of stood there and watched her take it tells you, and they're all about 10 or 12 years younger than me, tells me that the system isn't changed enough, because they would have gone through the collegiate system 5 to 7
Yep.
years after me, and that the groupthink was still there to tolerate what they were seeing happen to her, even though they were all pros at that level. Tells me what they're learning at the NCAA system or any collegiate system. There's still a lot of work to be done, and hopefully, as athletes the pro athletes and we keep using our voices now, it will have a trickle down effect. But what I'm loving is that Mary Kane's young. Like, what is she, like 22?
Oh yeah.
And she's kind of spearheading this movement. As much as athletes like myself have spoken out against it, she's the one with the profile, and she's the one with the reach to those 15-year-old girls and boys, that they're going to now know those behaviors aren't appropriate. And that's hugely important to me. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't think we're doing enough. Hopefully we see some drastic changes once schools open up after quarantine.
So we're talking about that part with the mental aspect. At the high school level and the collegiate level, are we doing enough? And I guess, nationally, for equalization in distance for female and male and the competitive. There was a big issue with that, even when my daughter was in high school, about the girls running the same distance as the boys in the junior and senior level, and then collegiate. It was the right thing to do. Do you agree?
Yes, I don't know necessarily. Like, there's been discussion on, did we have to bring the women up to the men's distance, or could we have found a distance in the middle? Because some of the arguments were, and I haven't really decided how I feel about it, because looking at the high school system in the US, from grade 9 up, the girls run 5K. And we separate into age groups in Canada, but they don't in the US for high school running. They have grade 9s racing against seniors, and then sometimes you have some really stellar grade 9s that beat all the seniors. Versus in Canada, we have midgets, juniors, and seniors. So then you have shorter distances if you're a midget male or female, junior male or female, senior male or female. So I didn't know if it was necessarily the right approach to then take women's distance running in Canada, which already had a very small pull, and have them running the senior women running 10K. What we actually saw was a pretty decent drop off from our juniors to the senior ranks, because going from running a 5 or 6K as a junior to a 10K cross country as a senior for a club senior is a big ask. And I just wondered, like, if the better answer would have been to come back with, we used to have long course and short course in cross country. I know, like, Kevin Sullivan used to dominate the short course. It was like a 4K. I wonder why we didn't consider doing that and having equal distances then. So then having a short course 4K male and female, and having the long course 8K male and female, and then you get to keep the draw and the pull of younger athletes in there. You get to keep your milers in there that want to run cross country but don't want to run a 10K.
Yep.
And it allows for that little bit more sport development.
So, you know, the whole part of this where we're talking about university, I want to make it clear that, you know, sports is a wonderful thing, and it gives so many people an avenue for an education. Like we didn't discuss with you. I think you went out and went to Ottawa, then Michigan to do, finish up your schooling. But, you know, that education, I mean, at the end of the day, hockey's not there all the time. Football's not there all the time. Running's not always going to be there. So should we be, you know, guiding our younger athletes that are exceptional? And I shouldn't even say exceptional athletes, because I've helped a lot of hockey players who weren't the cream of the crop that went to Division I programs and got an education. But, you know, I don't hear enough people in other sports talking about the importance of education and falling back on it. Do you agree that we should be emphasizing a lot of that? And I'm not just saying NCAA, because we do have some really good schools here in the CIS as well.
Yeah. I've played this game a lot with myself on what would my career have looked like had I gone directly into pro running instead of going to law school. And I look back and I think I was meant to do it in the order that I did, that I went to law school first, got my degrees, was a fully practicing attorney, still practice on an augmented schedule now, but was fully practicing law when I had my breakthrough in my marathoning. And maybe I would have made a few other Team Canada teams and maybe this, maybe that. But I also think the voice I have within sport came from the education that I have. And that, especially since the last Olympics, I've been sick and injured every year. I've had 3 surgeries in 3 years. That I could only imagine what my body and what my mind would be like right now if I didn't know that, you know, if everything falls apart, if the surgeries don't work, if I don't get back to that level of running, I at least have my education to fall back on. I have a job, I have a career. And we see that a lot, especially in the more popular sports like hockey or basketball, baseball as well, where you have these players, predominantly men, make these big teams or go for broke, and either they make them and they get injured right away, or they don't get into the draft, or they don't get drafted. And then it's kind of a now what? And I just like, if those athletes had been, you know, kept in an education system, or at least done correspondence courses or something, just to kind of keep their minds busy, keep them gaining education and skills, that, as like you said, like, sport is fleeting. There's no guarantees in it. You can be at the top of your game one day and fall flat on your face the next. And I do think we do need to keep an emphasis on education. I'm not taking away from the athletes that go pro at a young age, but there needs to be benchmarks. There needs to be check-ins on what's your plan 2 years from now. Everyone thinks of a 4-year cycle with the Olympics or whatever, a contract, however long a contract is in the NFL. Everyone thinks in those terms. And nobody thinks of like having benchmarks in between of like, what happens if you tear your ACL first season in? What's your backup plan?
Well, considering most careers in football and hockey are maybe 3.5, 4 years long,
Yeah.
So a lot of those guys, yes, they rush into it, they sign. The entry level money is not as good as the free agent money, but the problem is
Hmm.
most of them don't get there, right?
No.
So I want to jump out of college, and obviously you would have hit the road after. You would have made a decision of I'm going to choose to tackle some form of a pro career or a national team, and you would have probably hit the road. My guess is that you did fives and you did tens, and you were working your increments up to a half and full marathon. What was that transition from college like to either national cross country or to the road?
Yeah, so once I moved from Tennessee, I'd done a few road races in university. You kind of always do, just a 5K or so. My first 10K on the roads was actually once I moved to Ottawa for my Canadian law degree. I did, I think it was like a Labor Day 10K or something. And it was put on by the Ottawa Senators. And I remember there were players kind of being around. And I don't even remember what I ran, but like I was like, oh, that actually wasn't that bad. Like a 10K on the track seems really long sometimes, but on the road it actually wasn't terrible. And because I was putting myself through law school, and I was like decent enough on the roads that that's my pro career in my mind was just run fast enough to pick up a couple $100, on the weekends here and there to pay for my books or pay for groceries and not have to just sell my plasma to buy gas and groceries like I was doing. So yeah, it never really crossed my mind that I was going to be like a pro. I remember competing against Melindy Elmore and Carmen Dumas-Hussar and Megan Metcalf and all these girls that have like been to the Olympics, and they were pros. They had gone to bigger universities. They had the talent level that they were here. And because of, just the cards that I'd been dealt, I kind of always put myself down here, that if all things being equal, I could compete against them. I just had kind of made my peace that like law has been my passion my entire life. I'm in law school. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm content to just like run well enough to make some money. And then it wasn't until I had sat for the bar exam, passed the bar exam, and was getting sworn in that same day, got talked into going to Kenya for a few weeks in January 2012. And I said no at first. People kept telling me to go, offering to help me pay for it or like pay for it up front, and then I'd reimburse them. And I was a hard no from all of November, all of December. And then the first week of January, I was like, sure, I'll give it a go. And then it's all history from there.
Yeah, there's a lot. I see a lot of Canadians now. I'm pretty sure. Obviously, I saw you, I think there, but Reed Coolsat, I know, has gone
Mm-hmm.
over. I remember when my daughter ran that 10K in Ottawa. Tara was there and was
Yep. Mm-hmm.
chatting to my daughter about Kenya. And then when she found out how old my daughter was, she was like, "What? Why? Okay, I guess you're not coming over to Kenya, right?" But it was it was fun. But it's another experience that can help our athletes develop, because what I see, especially distance running, there was a lack of support at one point
Mm-hmm.
in time. That was my view on it. And I mean, part of it was the funding, part of it was the training, part of it was even getting, like you said, the opportunity to train against elites. A part where I pointed out to my daughter when she was younger and she was running was getting to understand how you and I think Krista DeShane, how you guys could basically win marathons, and there is a standard for it, and you're running the Olympic standard, but the Canadian team is setting a standard much higher.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter didn't understand that, because the way I trained my daughter was you earn what you get, and then it's given to you. She had a hard time understanding how you could run what the Olympics sets as a standard. So,
Me too.
so that to me, is a smack in the face. And again, this is the whole where I see more character building with Lanni Marchant, right? Like I see you're getting smacked around, or you're told this, and the same thing happened to you, I think, with the 10K and the marathon. You had some issues going on there where they weren't wanting that to be allowed. And I said, listen, like if you've got your best athlete in this distance and the best athlete in that distance, and it's the same girl, and if the time frame works out at the Olympics for rest, who are you to decide that? I mean, you know, do you agree?
Exactly.
Do you agree? Are we getting over this or no? Are we still stuck in this, especially for women, females?
Yeah.
Are we stuck in this pattern still or no?
It's gotten a lot better. So yeah, in 2012, I ran the IOC standard. I was well under, I think it was like 13 minutes under the IOC standard, but I was like, it was 2:29:55.
It was seconds.
And and I ran 2:31:50. So I was like 2 minutes. So basically like a 600, like a race pace 600 meters off of making that Olympic team. And there was politics involved about the fact that I hadn't really been that good leading up. So I basically was told I was a flash in the pan and not good enough to go, that I wasn't a rising star in the sport. And the part that I argued was that when they made the selection criteria for the team, any other event had a rising star category except the marathon. The marathon was kind of a do or die standard for Canada. And I tried to argue that A, you promised a rising star standard, you didn't give one. And B, had you given one, I would have met it based on the math that you use for your other standards. And they told me I wasn't good enough. So then my answer was to run the national record 18 months later and prove to them that not only am I good enough, I'm the best you've ever seen. And that kind of set the tone for the next 3 years of my career. And by 2016, there was the double-double debacle that you keep alluding to about me wanting to do both events at the games. I'd qualified for both. I had satisfied every criteria. I jumped through every hoop. And then the head coach at the time was known for his gameplay, very similar to my skating coach, to my college coach. I keep encountering the same man, the same personality. And I don't say man that it always has to be a man. It's just, in my case, it's literally the same man, like over and over and over again. Same personality, same abusive tactics, same manipulation, etc. The difference is I was older and smarter and better each time. And but now since by 2017, we had a full women's team for the marathon. Dana Pitahorsky had a very similar experience to my first world championships. She had to walk it in for parts of it. And then now she's qualified for whenever the next Olympics is, whether it's supposed to be this summer, it got bumped to next summer. Hopefully it's still a go. But it just shows that her journey was given a little bit more, I don't want to take anything away from Dana, but she was given a little bit more, there was a more forgiving journey, I'd say.
A smoother path. Right?
Yeah. And for that came from the women like myself and Krista Duchesne, really arguing back in 2012 and then proving year after year from 2012 to 2016 that the system was flawed and that they needed to do better. And they are doing better. And you see better funding now. They have way more support. The standards are more equal between male and female. For me, unfortunately, I've been sick and injured, so I haven't gotten to not take advantage, but I haven't gotten to see that growth in AC. But I'm close enough with my teammates, and I'm not blind, that I can see our team as a whole is dominating. We're having some amazing performances. The depth of Canadian women's marathoning in Canada is deeper than it's ever been. And I feel like I get to take a small amount of credit for that, but I also get to say it's because AC finally pulled the wool off their eyes and got out there and did some good work. Yeah,
I was going to credit you and, like I said, yourself. And I mean, I guess I would have to say like you and Krista Duchesne, because you were like 1-2, you're battling around the same age, right? But the other girls you're talking about are younger than you guys. And
it's a hit and miss. Like Lindsay Tessier is 41 and she was 9th at World Champs last year.
But the ones that are coming up, like I don't know how Rachel Cliff, I'm not sure her age, but
they're all around 30, early to mid 30s.
But you're a couple years ahead of them, and again, I think you helped catapult those ones coming out of school and into the sport. But then I think there's younger girls now coming up that look up to you guys, right? So
Yeah.
I was going to say you do get the credit for that, right? As much as the people that don't like you won't give you that credit. There's always going to be my daughter used to cry after winning every race through in London, every single one of them, blowing everybody away, come back crying, which is not what you want with a young girl that's trying to do something for fun. Did I do the wrong thing as a parent? I took a shoe stand that was from I forget what brand, but it was "There Will Be Haters" is the word, and I put it up on her thing, and I just said that you can't please everybody, and
No, you can't.
you're going to have people that will respect you, people that will not like you but will compete against you, and then you'll just have right out people that you said are constantly down your throat, and you'll never be able to shake those people off. It's just you have to put your head to the grindstone or your nose to the grindstone and just keep working hard. Now, young girls, role models that look up to you. Again, coming through this whole Olympic part, we talk distance running, and a touchy subject is sexuality or sexual. And I know you went through the whole thing with a female's body because there was a lot of, I don't even know if it was backlash, but you know what? It's I went through it with my daughter again. And when she was 12, because she was taller and her legs were built from running, I would hear comments from men or young, like 18-year-old boys when I would be following her in my car. She's only 12 or 11. They don't know. Maybe they thought she was 18, but the comments were lewd and inappropriate. And again, it's you guys are wearing what you're wearing for comfort. Like, I mean, I remember the old cotton T-shirt days and Band-Aids on my nipples from running, right? So how has that really evolved? And again, I'm not saying it was your responsibility, but you kind of led a charge through stuff. And I know you testified or you did some speaking regarding, women's rights or equality or sexuality as far as being not treated like objects. That's a strong thing for you, because I also see a lot of posts with Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, like these are strong, independent women, and it means a lot to you. I mean, that's your brand. I mean, when I see that, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's not that you're intending to do that. That's just Lanni. And like you said, some people hate me or some people like me. I will use the word respect, because you're going about it in a honest approach, and you're not BSing. And like I said, you're trying to do what's right for everybody, but again, you're on a platform and you have to be careful because you do have young ones coming up, whether they're males or young females. How do you feel about that type of subject and how you've handled that over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I always say I'm unapologetically me. Like, obviously there were some periods of growth there where I had to find my voice again or find myself again. But yeah, when I testified at the House of Commons about the commentary on women in sport at the Olympics, it was kind of a funny experience because I was asked to go there, and I'm in the room, and we had the Minister of Sport at the time testifying, talk about that she was part of an initiative 20 years prior to that, and that they were doing a follow-up now. And I'm sitting there in the galley listening, going, you waited 20 years to do a follow-up? Like, holy geez. And then I had what I wanted to say, and like the script kind of went out the window, because I honestly felt that they wanted me to be there to do the equivalent of shut up and dribble, like sit there and pat everybody's back and tell them how great things are. And instead, I pointed out some flaws in the system. And I feel like some of the Parliament members were a bit taken aback by it. I obviously was respectful and said everything in a polite tone and used my legal education and used my words, but I wasn't there to play, and I wasn't there to sit and look pretty. I was there to call out the fact that we had one of our most successful women's teams ever across all sports at the games, and that allotted us 50% of the coverage. And I wasn't saying that we shouldn't have been covering men's sport at all. And I think that gets confused with any movement, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter. Trying to advocate for one minority group doesn't mean we're trying to steal and take away from the others. But I had done my research and I'd sat down with some members of the CBC broadcast team and some other news members, and they admitted that had the women's team not done as well, the coverage would have defaulted to a men's team losing. Like, had our rugby women not won a medal, they would have showed the rugby men's team losing. And that didn't sit well with me. I like equal coverage, fine, but women shouldn't have to have these outstanding performances to earn equal coverage. And we see with the Black Lives Matter movement that as soon as there's a victim, people want to tarnish the victim and say that they had a criminal record, et cetera, or praise the victim that he was a violinist and he was this good guy and he was this nice man and this horrible thing happened to him. And I was like, the backstory shouldn't matter. They're people first. And for sport, our backstory and our gender shouldn't matter. What we wear doesn't matter. We're athletes first. As females, we're putting in just as much work as our male counterparts, and we deserve that to be recognized. And if all's fair, then whether the women's team wins or loses, they get 50% of the coverage. And the commentary needs to be on the women, on their athletic prowess, on their bodies as these athletic machines, not as what's attractive, not on who the male coach is behind them. Or like when Penny Oselak won, everybody kept talking about the fact that her brother plays in the NHL. Like, good on him. But he didn't win the Olympic medal. She did.
That's right.
And you could talk about her coming from an athletic family and a very, high pedigree family of athletes, obviously. But the story shouldn't have been like about her brother. And that's not to take away from his accomplishments in any way, but that was the commentary. And so when I testified at the House of Commons, it did not make me popular. I was actually a bit stunned at how poorly received it was in the general public, and the awful threads that went up online and the misogynistic comments that were made. And I applaud tracky.ca because they took the thread down. I did an interview about it for the National Post, I think it was, and commented on the article and about how awful the stuff was that was being written there, and pointed out that if it had been a racial or homophobic slur against me, people would have been up in arms, as they rightly should be. But we still live in a society where misogynistic and chauvinistic comments against women stand, and they're seen as acceptable. And so Tracky took the thread down. Unfortunately, other websites like Let's Run is notorious for this kind of content. But like what you posted for your daughter, like, haters are going to hate. And 2017 was a big growing year for me. I had to learn to be okay with the stuff that was said about me online and learn that it doesn't matter. And when I did the article for I Run magazine, where I mimicked Adam Van Couverden's shot, I gained a huge following, and I lost a lot of a following, and I lost some friends that were close to me because of it. And I lost, but previous to that picture, or those pictures, there was one posted of my middle finger, me flipping off, and the number of parents that DM'd me saying, you were a hero in our house, and we're not letting our children follow you. You
realize my daughter in grade 10 for one of her projects had a project with feminism or women's equality, and had you in it, and had put that picture of you giving the middle finger in the project for it. And I mean, she got one of the highest grades in that class, right?
Good.
For being herself.
Oh, that makes me happy.
For being herself, right? I mean, as a final grade. That's why the teacher said she was one of my best students, because it's not sheep, or it's not everybody following the same path. She was thinking with their own brain, being herself. Yeah. And that's
be unapologetically her.
That's right. That's right. So the comments on the forum, I mean, you're just a body running, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way, the sad part is, had you sat at a table with some of the people making those comments with the educational degree that you have and law background, I'm sure many knew about it. I'm sure some knew, but I'm sure some that made the comments only went by video they saw of you or pictures they saw of you, and just made a judgmental, statement based on your body versus, the intelligence that she might actually have, right? Or the voice that she actually has for standing up for herself or for others.
Yeah. It's, and I'm dealing with it still now. I don't know if you follow my social media, but last week I posted a screen grab from some DMs that I received where I was told to shut up and run. And I said, look, like, I might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I'm too busy enjoying my beer to give a damn. And no, like, this is my platform. It's my Instagram. It's a one-way conversation. I'm posting what's important to me,
Yep.
what I like, what I think is good, what I think is inspirational or not. And if you don't like it, don't follow me. But don't tell me to shut up and run, because I'm more than just an athlete. I'm more than just a runner. I was way more than just a runner before I ran my 2:28 and before I made the Olympic team. And that's the message I said to those parents when they chastised me for putting up a post with my middle finger and said that it was inappropriate. I DM'd them pictures of NHL players, male basketball players, all celebrating, flipping off the camera. And I pointed out that it's not my job to raise your children. I'm happy to inspire them. I'm happy to help teach them to grow their own voices. But if I'm parenting your children, there's a problem, because I screw up more things in a day than I get right. I'm still learning. I don't have my own children. I don't want to raise yours. So,
Well, and that's the thing. And if you and I mean, and with your education as well, even with running, with trial and error, is if you know everything, life's over. I mean,
yeah.
you're learning something every single day. And if you're not, I mean, I think you're a little, thick in the head for some of those parents that think, let's not cut her some slack that she doesn't have kids, but it's one of those things where you are who you are. Again, he was always my idol. I know my cross country coach pulled me by the neck a few times because I was a front runner, and it went back to Steve Prefontaine. And again, if you knew enough with Steve was the same type of attitude. I don't give a shit. I'm going to fight the I'm going to fight the ATU. And it was always, he was bold, right? And to be bold is to be yourself.
Yeah. And it's not comfortable. I'll tell you that. Like, it's not like I do this easily. Like, there are days where I question myself, but I question myself less and less. And it's like I said, 2017 was a really hard year. I think primarily because I was dealing with all of the backlash from the double-double, from the testifying at the House of Commons, from the articles that I wrote, dealing with my dad dying right before New Year's of that year, dealing with my own kidney issue that almost took me out in May. And so it was just kind of like, people were just, everyone has their thing. And that's what I try to advocate for, just overall, for bullying. And people think it's strange. I was 32, 33 at the time when that was going on. And I was like, well, no, it's bullying. Like, it doesn't matter your age. These people were bullying me. They have no idea what's actually going on in my life right now. Mm-hmm. And that I'm still choosing to stand up and advocate, despite the fact that life is just throwing me friggin' bricks to the head, one after one after one after one. And that's where I realized, like, people aren't going to necessarily know my story unless I'm more vocal. And that's where I started speaking out about the mental health issues and the addiction issues that my father suffered from. Started speaking out about my own health issues, and realized that, like, people aren't going to get it as a majority. Some people will. And those are the people that matter. And in terms of the trolls and the crap that's said online, I was DMing an American steeplechaser, Colleen Quigley, who's also a good guest you should have on here. And because she had posted something similar to her story about somebody telling her to shut up and run. And I commented saying, don't those people suck? And told her, like, don't worry, for every one of those, you are inspiring 100 others to at least think and try to do better. And in this day and age, like, that's all we can ask. People aren't going to get it perfect. I've screwed up and said things incorrectly before. I'm still learning. And I think regardless of our age and regardless of our backgrounds and whatever backstory we have going on, like, everyone has their thing. There's not a person out there who's skating through this life easily. They just are able to show things differently and put a mask on, however you want to put it. But I realized in 2017 that it doesn't really matter what I have going on. Like, nobody else is going to get up and say this stuff, then fine. Like, if I'm going to have my kidney take me out, I'm going to have it take me out with me screaming from the hilltops of what I think is important.
Well, it's funny because if you remember at the very beginning of the episode here, I said about the path to where we are now with Lanni Marchant. How did we get to there? Well, like I didn't want to obviously bring up stuff with your dad, and it was personal stuff.
Yeah.
I know you posted about it, but the single parent home, the getting into down in Tennessee, the coach getting out of there, then all of a sudden you have the problems with qualifications for the Olympics, and so again, these are all these struggles that you're overcoming. Plus, distance running is a very mentally tough sport. Unless people really know it and understand it, they won't get it. But I'm a jerk. Like, you went to the Olympics, and we're talking about all this. We need some positivity. So along that way, you got to the Olympics. So how was that after? I mean, it's probably got to be a load off your shoulders. Was it not? I mean, like I said, don't forget your stresses, whether you realize it or not, are from a caring mom that's raising you guys by yourself, even though you still had some stuff in, like your biological father, but then all the stuff going to a college coach, and then having problems just to get to the games. That had to be a load just going to the games.
Yeah, I when I do talks, I tell people, like, when you see success, yes, you're celebrating the high of that moment, but you're celebrating every low you went through to get there. And that's my approach, and that's how whether people agree with it or not, like, that's was my celebration of the Olympics, was like, not only did I get to compete and do both events, and as far as I'm concerned, I competed damn well. Obviously, you always want more and want better, but I was really proud of my performances considering how the summer had gone, dealing with the political side of things and the emotional turmoil of that. But yeah, especially in the marathon, the 10,000 was super cool. My bottoms got pulled down for one of the laps because a girl tripped behind me. You're just it's an Olympic stadium, and it was just this surreal experience. And it was over before I knew it. The race was so fast. The world record was set in it. And I just remember the gun going off. I remember my buns being pulled down. And I remember just like not giving up a step. And I ended up running my second fastest track time ever. And then, less than 2 days later, 46 hours later, I was lining up in the marathon. And when I finished that marathon, it was interesting. I was still kind of numb to it because I had such a game face on and had to stay focused between the two events. And because the head coach was basically a dick and had tried to get me kicked off the team. He let me be announced in both events, and then behind closed doors was trying to get me kicked off the team. So I knew there's nothing worse than feeling like you're unwanted. And so I felt like at the games, I had a job to do. I had something to prove to myself and to these other people, and to prove that I deserved to be there. And that I didn't really feel any of that, though. I didn't really feel any relief from that until I got through the media scrum post-race, and got to see my mom and two of my sisters and got to see the emotion on them. And then I was like, holy shit, like what I just did was really cool. Like, that's a really cool thing.
But what you just did was really hard, because I remember back in the day when Lassie Viren used to run the 5,000 and the 10,000. That was talked about as difficult, like the 5 and the 10 doubling up.
Yeah.
Doing the 10 in a marathon, that's a whole different story. And the weather was pretty hot, wasn't it?
Oh, I remember. I think it was like around 30K into the marathon. You know, when you run past those like bank clocks that have like the time of day, some scripted statement, and then the temperature, and it said like 37 degrees Celsius. And I was like, oh, this is hot.
And that was 4 days after the 10.
2 days after the 10.
2 days.
Yeah, 46 hours in between. And yeah, part of what I spoke to, part of what was important about me doubling in the like political move women's sport forward regard was the schedule is never set up to accommodate women that want to do these doubles. They always just put our events in kind of as fillers. Like the men get there's usually a week apart for the men's 10,000 and men's marathon. And so I was, part of what I was hoping to do is inspire other women to want to do these doubles and argue for change. I know Allison Felix, the U.S. great sprinter, had to get them to change the schedule so she could do I think the 200, the 400, and the 4x4. I forget exactly what events, but it was such a odd thing that for them to change the schedule. And it should be common sense that if you're going to allow multiple days between for men to do these doubles, then find the way to work the schedule out to allow the same time for women. And I've been like this my entire life. I don't like double standards. I don't do them. I don't like them. I want things to be equal but equitable as well. And I, especially in the last couple of years with the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, trying to explain to people that we can't just argue for equality, because I'm 5'1". If you put me and LeBron James up at a fence trying to watch a soccer game on the other side of the fence, he can see over the fence, I can't. You give me a stool to stand on, that makes things more equitable between us. Now we have equal opportunity to see over the fence. And that's been the only way I've been really able to explain it to people, of like, when I'm arguing for equality, you can't come back at me with men can be raped too, or all lives matter. Because yes, I'm not saying that those things can't happen, but what I'm arguing for is that we need that stepping stool. We need you to change the rules and the way you're thinking on things to give us the opportunity to have equal access to things. And without equity, we can't have equality. And so hopefully, Lord only knows now with COVID changing the Olympics, how the schedule will work out. I feel like it's going to be a very weird Olympics regardless. But hopefully going forward, we start to see schedules and calendars that allow for women to have the same opportunities as their male counterparts.
Yeah, because I last I checked, I don't think there's any scientific proof that a male body takes longer to recover from a 10,000 or, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's definitely, it isn't fair. I mean, yeah, it's you know, like I said, it's a tough one, but I totally agree. Yeah. It's like, if they're going to get that same recovery, or there is a day for guys that are doubling up, then it should be the same for the females that are doubling up.
No, because it's it was such a cool experience. And as much as it's taken me a few years to be able to talk about the Olympics with any positivity in my voice, because it was such an ordeal to get there, it was a really cool experience to be able to do both. And there's no guarantee that I get to go back to the games. I'm trying my damnedest to get back. Obviously the world's a little bit weird right now, but representing your country and being able to showcase your skills, and whether it's in one event or multiple events, like, there's nothing like it. And it was such a high point of my career that I want to make sure the system works so that other people's journeys to the Olympics don't have to be as bumpy. Take my personal life and how I grew up and everything out of it, but the actual journey as the athlete, Lanni, like, I want that journey for other people, but I hope that I've helped smooth out some of the bumps in the road.
Was there a point after the Olympics? Did you just let it out? Did you cry? Like, yeah, you would. Yeah. I'm that type of person. I mean, I played semi-pro hockey, and I represented. I'm hearing impaired, so I represented the Canadian national deaf hockey team and won gold. But I mean, you know, you come through obstacles like yourself, and as a pro athlete, when there's so much weight on your shoulders, people are expecting so much. People are judging you. People are watching your every move. You make the Olympics. All the stuff that you went through with the big family like that, being raised by mom, and then you're finally there, it's done. Was there a point where you had to let it out somewhere?
Yeah, but I was really good at putting it off for like
you're like me. No, I get it. I walk away and I go in. Yeah. Could have even been when you're back in the house and you get to the point and no one's there, and it's like it's a load off your shoulders, right? Because again, that's how you get to mental struggles too, is the build up of things. And that's where, again, you know, we talked about our athletes earlier. It's people don't understand. I mean, it's not just a piece of meat or a commodity. We're human beings. And in the end, you can talk trash about us all day long, or you can say things about us all day long, or judge us all day long, or we have to read about ourselves all day long. But in the end, we have feelings too. And in the end, you know, people will go, oh, well, just, you know, shut up. You just ran the Olympics. Like, what, you know, but again, the Olympics is not a cure for everything that you've overcome. And people don't realize that your life's just going to be perfect because you made the Olympics, right? So, but it did get better though, right? Because if I remember, you took off bronze medal, was it in the Pan Am? Was it at home? Wasn't it at home?
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
at
in
home, right?
that was in 2015. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
sorry,
2015 Pan Ams.
I
Yeah.
took a few concussions, so every now
Yeah.
and again memories. But I remember
Yeah.
that it was because if memory serves me correct, if I want to say, was it De Silva? Is that her name? De Silva, was it
Yep.
the American? Yeah, so that was a very fun race to watch
Oh, that was
because
a Hispanic. That was a Mexican girl. Desiree Davila, or she's married now. So Desiree Linden was the American who I've trained with so much, was second. But nothing beats racing on home soil.
oh yeah,
And that crowd, oh my goodness. I remember like when they brought us out to the track to do our final strides and stuff, like the atmosphere just felt charged. And the first 3/4 of that race was just me telling myself, like, don't get caught up in the crowd. Don't get caught up in the crowd.
Yeah.
And then Des Linden, the American, made a break, like broke the field. And I covered the move with another American and the Mexican athlete. And then there was 3 of us. And then, so at that point, I knew I was going to get a medal, but I was trying to pick
What
my
color? Yeah.
as I put it. And that's where I fed off the crowd and just tried to surge as much as I could. But Des and the Mexican athlete both got the better of me that day. But it was of all my races, that's one of my very, very favorites. And my time wasn't very fast at all, but and it was for my family to be able to come up and not have this huge international travel. They were able to drive up to Toronto from London. The man that got me into running, Mr. Chapman, was there. My coach was there. It was just such a awesome experience that unfortunately not everybody could come to the Olympics. So for me, Pan Am Games holds that special place where like that was for the important people in my life, the Olympic race. Like that was me showcasing what all these years of work have done.
Crossing that finish line. What was that? Was it an explosion for you? Was it like I know when I raced in Connecticut and I was in school and my parents, they only got to see me race once when I was in Connecticut. And like I was top in New England and all American there. But one race that they could come and I dominated in that race. It was like you said, it's a special moment where it's a rare thing to have the family there. And I remember my dad, it was in the fall time and it was raining and I ended up tumbling down a slick embankment and I was covered in mud and I had blood in my elbows. And I remember I ran through a pack of turkeys that were in an open field in border of Connecticut and New York. And it was cold. And I remember getting into the shower, but the adrenaline from that race and having them there, and my coach stuck my dad on the four-wheeler in front of me for most of the race, right? And I was trying to just keep up with them. And I remember I didn't know my dad was there, but I remember being just so pumped up. And I mean, this isn't nowhere near Pan Am, but I mean, I remember yelling in the shower. I had all my gear on still in a hot shower and my spikes still in the concrete. And I was trying to warm up and I let the biggest F-bomb out like a scream, right? And my dad's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm just, like I could sense that in your face with they're there, your family's there. And when you got to that finish line, you knew what you did, you knew what you accomplished. I don't think the color mattered. I know when you're in that race, you were gunning for what you could, but the fact that you did it, you got hardware and you did it in front of the family. It's like, it's one of those moments in life that you never forget, right? It makes everything bittersweet in the end, right?
It does. Yeah. Those are the memories that these last couple of years that have been really hard for me professionally as a runner, personally, and then for my family as well. Those are the kind of the memories that you get to cherish and you get to kind of hold on to as a carrot to keep you going and keep you motivated to get out the door and run after 3 surgeries, or get my niece won awards yesterday, for her cross country achievements this year. She made OFSA the first time as a grade 9, and getting to know that like she's growing to love a sport that's given me so much. And soccer is her first love, so she's already made up her mind she wants to represent Team Canada for soccer. But just getting to see her and my other nieces and nephews grow into sport and grow into themselves and know that they're going to end up with those same kind of memories and those same kind of like family moments is really cool.
So is she from the London area?
Yeah, all of my siblings, the siblings with kids, they all live in my hometown. So my
So,
brother's got his daughter Paige, and he's got two little boys. My sister has a little girl and a little boy, and my other brother has an 18-month-old boy.
so you said she wanted to represent Canada for the soccer, and
Yeah,
she's in the distance running. So she must be familiar with Jessie Fleming. Then that's probably, does she know her?
probably.
Yeah,
Uh,
but we used to hear her
just a
name
wee bit.
we used to hear her name all the time at track and field. Because
Yeah,
I think she was a couple years older than my daughter. Obviously, I think she's
yeah.
probably three or four grades ahead of what my daughter was growing up through elementary. So. Um, so you get into Under Armour, which was
Yeah.
cool. I thought it was
Hmm.
a unique brand because I associate Under Armour with warriors, more or less. Some of the athletes that they pick are interesting and unique. But you got diagnosed, correct, when you were with Under Armour with
Yeah.
your labrum issue, right?
Yeah.
Is that where the start of a lot of the things happened from?
Um, yes and no. So as I was signing with Under Armour is where my kidney kind of decided it didn't want to be with the program anymore, which sucked. And I'd been dealing with it in some way, shape, or form for a while. We just didn't know the severity of it. And then one minor surgery turns into sepsis and turns into a really crappy time. For the labral tear, same thing. I've been dealing with it for years. We just didn't know what it was. And because of my very stubborn, tenacious attitude, I was still performing well. Like I raced at Pan Am Games, raced at the Olympics, and what wasn't that I wasn't in pain during it. I just had basically been told marathoning's hard, and I think the fact that I was still performing well kind of disproved to any of the specialists I was seeing that it could have been anything more serious. And then I signed with Under Armour, and they had me at some of their media events, and they had me up demoing some of their gait analysis programming and their shoes. And they noticed that I had this like major slap in my left foot, and I'm like, yeah, like it was kind of always been there, but after the kidney surgery and being stuck in a hospital bed forever, it's a lot worse. And but it's funny, I used to have this major pain in my left hip, and I don't have any pain anymore. And I was down in Baltimore, and they're like, all right, well, we can set you up to see somebody here, or like, you're Canadian and healthcare is free. Like, if you want to try and get it there, we can recommend some people for you to see. So that started the journey of like chasing down specialists everywhere, like Windsor, London, Toronto, Saskatoon, Vancouver. And then one of the specialists I saw in Vancouver just randomly happened to be at a convention with a doctor from the Mayo Clinic, and they had boozed it up and had a good time. So they were buddies now. So that Vancouver doctor was able to get me in to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And that's where we did all the nerve conduction testing while running, and discovered that if we numbed as much as I didn't have pain in my hip anymore, the act of numbing my hip turned my stride back to normal, turned everything else back on. Whereas previous to numbing the hip, from seated to standing, walking to running, nothing on my left leg fired other than I have this tiny bulge in the back of my hamstring. It's its own little like special muscle group. I was using that and my psoas and QL, so my trunk on the left side, to control my leg. But when they numbed the hip, all the muscles came back. My quads started firing, my hamstrings were firing. So that meant like, be content with the career you've had, or go through major surgery with no guarantee you get back. But the only way for a shot at it was the major hip surgery in 2018.
So how has it been the last 2 years as far as for the road for recovery?
Pretty good. There's obviously been some setbacks. It was a major surgery. It took about 6 months before I was back walk running. And then unfortunately ended up having to have abdominal surgery last spring. And so I had to rehab back from that. And then I had a stress fracture in my right femur, so my opposite surgical side femur, in November of this past year. So there's been setbacks, but this is the healthiest my body's been probably since 2013-ish. And it's amazing how easy running feels now. And there's still some of the nerve damage that was done with the running on the hip tear for so long. There's no guarantee that will fully recover. It might mean I don't get to taste the times that I used to run, but I'm convinced I will. I'm convinced that, there's people who've overcome worse. And as much as I've mentioned, like I wasn't necessarily dealt the best cards for my lifestyle, my life, over the course of my life, I should say. At least I was dealt a full hand, because there are plenty of people that aren't. And so I don't tell my story as a woe is me, and I don't talk about these things openly looking for sympathy or empathy. What I talk about it is to say, like, despite what you've been given, good or bad, you need to be grateful for it. You need to help inspire and show people there's a way out of whatever darkness they're in. And that, yeah, like there's plenty of things that I wish had gone differently in my life, but I also recognize, had any one of those things gone differently, then maybe I'm not here today doing what I'm doing. So
Perfect.
It's amazing.
It's amazing
have to
that
accept the journey.
Yeah, it's amazing that you've kept the positivity through all of it. I mean, right to the end of where we are, and that's current. And it's, a lot of people would have thrown the towel in. Would have thrown the towel in from having the situation with personal life with parents, or with a college coach, or with, the overcoming a battle of even qualifying for the Olympics, and so on, right? So I have like two more questions maybe, and I'll let you go because it's been pretty much an hour. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but so one I want to touch quickly on is, I remember my daughter was very, very nervous and scared. Yeah, she was young, qualifying for the Canadian Nationals and being in the elite group, or the group of 30, which she obviously wasn't that elite, but I mean, for her age, it was pretty good at the time. And I remember she kept seeing social media posts with you, other female athletes, with constant needles in arms for clean sport, or checking for performance enhancing drugs. I won't mention names, but I read articles and stuff where, people had gone over to Kenya, or gone over to other countries and said, hey, like, they're looking for this person where they live at the address, and it would be relayed that people are coming to do a test. And you talk about, I won't, you talk about Mary Kane. I don't mean her, but the associated group involved, there was always talked about blood doping. Has this gotten better over the years with clean sport, or are we still seeing a cheated system, in your opinion? Or are we? I've known our athletes to be pretty damn humble people. You yourself, Krista DeShane, Eric Gillis, Reed Coolsat. I mean, they're Canadians, meaning there would be no intent, you would think, for any of us to cheat. But we're not turning a blind eye, but I know that they know stuff is going on. And is it getting better? I mean, we just had a scandal with the Boston Marathon and everything else, not even 3 or 4 years ago, with some of them testing positive, right? Or hidden tests. Is it going to clean up, or is it going to get better?
It's not better. I'll say that. They are trying, and there's testing, but it is frustrating as an athlete to line up and you're running against athletes that are dirty, or athletes that have served a ban already, and then they get welcomed back into sport like nothing ever happened, and like the benefits of their previous doping aren't still in their bodies. Because of what happened in cycling with Lance Armstrong and how much that sport lost favor after it, I don't think athletics, and that's the only sport I can speak on, other sports have their issues, but I don't think athletics really has the motive to really go public and really try to turn things around, because we'll lose favor. Like, I don't know anything about Usain Bolt. I'm going on record saying I'm not accusing him of anything, but heaven forbid, had he ever tested positive, track and field would have been done. If Andre DeGrasse ever tests positive, Canadian track and field will be done. And that's like, we know that, which means the higher ups know that, which means there's a reason why Russia was able to get away with their systematic doping for as long as they did. And we're ignorant to think that they're the only country doing it. And yes, Canadians are humble, and we do have great character. We're not, much like racism, we're not immune to it. We've had our athletes test positive. And in recent years even. And so it's going to take a lot of work to clean it up. Race like the world marathon majors are all trying. So like your New Yorks, your Bostons and everything, they recognize that relying solely on WADA wasn't going to get the job done. So they created their own initiative where if you're, especially if you're a pro registered to run in the race and you're an invited athlete, you don't get your bib number unless you watch an anti-doping course with them. And you're put in the testing pool. So the way it works now is if you're a national caliber level athlete, your federation can select who goes in the pool. It's not automatic. It should be. It should be if you're making national teams, if you're receiving government money, et cetera, you should automatically be in the testing pool. That's not the case. But your federation kind of picks and chooses who goes on the list. And then the IAAF and WADA can kind of have athletes that they throw in the mix as well. And then now world marathon majors. If you want to go run Boston, you're put in the doping pool, and they're going to show up and test you. So they're at least trying. We make a lot of excuses for countries that are, less developed, that they don't have access to X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, like find a way.
But they're the ones winning the marathons, right?
Yeah.
The ones that don't have access to X, Y, and Z, they're the ones winning and smashing people.
Yeah,
a little odd, right?
I love sport. I love my sport, and I feel like sometimes I come across as like an anarchist or like I'm Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball trying to knock everything down. But I just
You're being honest, Lanni. Like, come on. So you mentioned WADA, and in my opinion, it's about as crooked as Olympic figure skating with the judging and everything else.
It's a mess, and I think what we're seeing now, though, is more athletes like me are using their voice, and athletes with much bigger platforms than I have are using their voices, whether it's for Me Too, Black Lives Matter, clean sport, safe sport. I think the more we as athletes at any level realize we have a voice, and I know I'm tired of it, and I know plenty of other athletes are tired of these higher up powers that be making decisions on what we can and can't do, when we're the ones that have put our entire lives on hold to do this. And it's great the country gets behind us every 4 years for the Olympics, but there's a lot that goes on in those 4-year quads. And I've enjoyed, as much as not being able to compete at the level I want to the last couple of years has been hard. It's been so amazing to see the torch get passed and see all these other athletes stand up for what's right and argue and not be afraid to be anarchists or wrecking balls.
So it's funny because, we'll kind of go to normal people now. Normal people see you, or they see an Olympic athlete or a pro athlete, and they think their bodies are machines, like you said. Distance running, sometimes it depends, what, male, female, whether they're from Africa, like the body structures can be a little different. But they tend to be, like I said, your traditional, as you see a lot of lanky, tall. But most people,
not me.
Right? Most people, they think, the diet, right? But you love your burgers and you love your beer, right?
Yes,
you are a burger connoisseur and a beer drinker, right? And I mean, you've got to get calories in somehow. What is it about that you enjoy? Is that your unwind time, part of it?
Partly, yeah. Like growing up figure skating and then transitioning into endurance running was not great for eating disorders. So I definitely have had my struggles over the years. Even up until 2012, I was still struggling with it and had to come to the realization that I could be great at this sport with the body that I have, or I could keep trying to be great and starve my body and never make it. For little girls and women, there is a bit more pressure there because we're told we have to look one way by societal standards, and then depending on your sport, you're supposed to look another way. And for gymnastics, figure skating, ballet, distance running, the emphasis is on tiny and skinny or long-legged, and I don't fit into any of those categories other than like I'm a tiny human and short. But then I don't fit into the category of being a Kardashian lookalike. And so I, fortunately, as an adult, kind of was able to work my way through that. And in retrospect, I wish I'd used my sports psych and my counselor more. I wasn't using them back in 2010 through 2013. I was doing it on my own, doing it the hard way. But I've been a big advocate for women and girls and boys too. But again, like there's talking about LeBron James and I looking over a fence. Like I should be able to talk freely about what little girls and women go through without having to throw the caveat in that it can affect men as well. I love my burgers and beer now, but the burger thing came from the back in 2010 when I was really struggling with some eating things. I made a deal with myself that once a week I had to have a burger, and I had to have it without accounting for those calories elsewhere. I couldn't have the burger and then not eat the next day to offset the burger. I had to have the burger like a normal human and eat normal the rest of the week. And so now it doesn't have that same meaning. Now I just love burgers. But that for me was such a huge stepping stone. And you see from 2010, by 2012, I'm running 231. By 2013, I'm running 228. And the big part of it was I stopped obsessing over what I looked like. I stopped seeing getting a period as a sign that I was too fat. And I got less and less fractures. Of course, my hip was damaged, but I stopped fracturing. And then now the last couple of years, I've been really a huge advocate of where it does come for girls and men is REDS, relative energy deficiency syndrome. It's the umbrella that covers male and female overuse injuries, eating disorders, the hormonal effects that can happen. When we saw Ryan Hall had no testosterone left, that's why he retired from competitive sport. So as much as I talk about this being a female issue, now they've done the research and they've shown a way that we can have the conversation and include men, because it isn't just a women's issue. The way I put it though for girls and men is for when I line up on the start line of a race, I'm wearing 10 different hats. I'm there as the athlete Lanni. I'm there as a female. I'm there as somebody to show that you can have a bigger or stronger body and be a distance runner. I'm there fighting misogynistic comments. I'm there doing all these things. And men might show up wearing 5 hats. And that's a big difference. And I think it's very important for athletes like me who have struggled with the eating thing to talk candidly about it. And so people, male and female, learn like period, not a bad word. Talking about a monthly cycle, not an awkward thing. It's a human function.
We did it in this house with my daughter
Yeah.
with the, and yeah, it is normal. It is a thing where it's a fact of life. And if you're an athlete, it's another hurdle you're overcoming and dealing with, right?
Yeah. Food is amazing. I joke, I was like back in undergrad, I would order a salad without, hold the cheese, hold the croutons, hold this, no dressing, da 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 da. And I'm like, what the heck? I effing love cheese. Like what, man, like now I feel like I'm trying to eat all of it now to make up for the years I denied it. But like just those simple things, like food is your fuel, it's your energy, but it can be fun. And there's no harm in treating yourself. Obviously everything in moderation. Like I'm well aware that because my dad was an addict, there's a possibility that it runs in the family. And I do love my beer, but I'm also aware of like making sure I don't ever go too heavy with things. When I had all my major surgeries, I didn't take the pain meds. So as much as I am this lover of beer, I have to make sure for my human life, my professional life as a lawyer, and my athlete life that I keep things in check. And I love beer. I don't need to have beer every day. I love burgers. I don't need to have burgers every day.
So the quick question with the burger is, what is the burger of choice?
Oh man, I don't really have like a place that's my favorite because I travel way too much, but the sign of a good burger is one that like there's no polite way to eat it. You just have grease dripping down your face, down your arms. The bun is sliding off and the toppings are like you're having to like eat around it, kind of like you would like an ear of corn. You can't just like bite into it from one end. You have to bite on this top and then you have to go to the bottom and you have toppings that you're like putting back in. You should be an absolute mess when you finish that burger. And that's how you know it's a good burger.
We were in high school. That's what we used to do. We used to order a burger and we actually used to joke and say, can we get extra grease with that? So the last question for you is a Lanni question, and the Lanni question has to be an honest answer. And if I know Lanni enough, I probably know what your answer is going to be. If you could do it all over again, would you change anything about the path, the direction, or anything you did or is there anything that you regret or would change now from before?
No, like obviously you wish some stuff would go more smoothly, but like I said, if I change one thing, there's no guarantee I ended up where I'm at now, for better or for worse. And so my journey is my journey, and it's been hard at times, but I've accomplished so many great things. And like your daughter's an example. Like I got the day we met at the Ottawa 10K, and she was having a tough go of things. Like my words were able to help her through that. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I wouldn't change. I wouldn't have had those words without my experiences. So I wouldn't change them. I wouldn't change what I've gone through to trade off for anything.
That was the answer I expected out of you, and nothing different. Because, like I said, if I know Lanni enough, that's the answer. Is no, I wouldn't change a thing, because I wouldn't be who I am or where I was if I changed anything.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
all right, so I appreciate you jumping on, Lanni. I'm going to let you go. I know you're busy. It's an hour and 20 minutes. Kind of flew by. So I appreciate you jumping on, and you know what? Just keep working hard, and I'm sure everything will get back to where you need to be to pump out some miles consistently, and hopefully challenge again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, take care, Lanni.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.